G'day guys, it's DM Stevro here from Tactical Tiles. Today's video, I'm going to be showing you something like this. This is a bit of a back to basics type thing. So what we've got here is we've got a nice little floor for our outdoor adventures. Now this is a pretty cool product, pretty easy. I think it's available pretty much everywhere around the world. These are Cork tiles. Yep. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you how I make these cork tiles to look the way they do, the colours that I use, the types of paints, and yeah, show you a little bit of a setup about how I use them to play in my campaigns. So making these is super easy. All we need to do is draw our grid lines on. Carve them out a little bit because we want to have a nice little indent for the lines, and then paint them up. The surface on cork is amazing and it gives you this lovely texture, so it really does suit outdoor terrain. But I've also done these with dungeon terrain and cave terrain as well. So yeah, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is flip it over, and there you see the smooth cork finish that you get straight from the pack when you bring them out. Now I get these in a fairly big pack from a place called Bunnings. So we take our inch ruler and we mark out our grid. Doesn't have to be 100% spot on, but the more accurate you can be, the better. And when measuring these things, make sure you start from the same side when you measure further up. Otherwise you sometimes can be a little bit skew. So we just go ahead and we mark out this one. Okay, once you've got the lines marked out, or the locations marked out, it's very easy then just to find the markings and draw the grid line. And you want to go ahead and do that to all of the markings. Once we have our lines drawn out on this side, we flip it around and we grid the next side exactly the same way. Go. So yeah, it's all there. It's a nice grid. This is a 12-inch by 12-inch grid, and it's going to match the same as the grid we have on this side. Now we go to the stage of carving. This one takes a little bit of time, and if you're doing it at the kitchen table like I am, put something down. Last thing you want is the table getting mucked up and gouged out. Okay, so this bit is a bit time consuming, and you can really use anything you want to gouge a line. Here I'm just using a Phillips head screwdriver. I find it does the job, and you just basically hold your. I think it's important to note, use a metal rule for this. Yeah, okay, so it's pretty easy. We just basically drag the screwdriver along the surface of the cork. And all you're trying to do really is gouge out a nice little line to give that definition to the surface. So you can see it. That's it. It doesn't take that long really. It is a little time consuming. It's a little bit messy. So what you're left with is some cork dust, which I keep because I find that it's a good texture to add to make flocking and things like that. You can colour it up. But there you can see we have a little groove. It's like it's very hard to see. But yeah, it defines the line quite well and breaks up the textures. So you go ahead and you do that to the entire sheet in both directions, and then we'll be ready for painting. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, we take off the dust. We smooth over the surface a little bit just with our hands, just to get all the loose stuff off. You do feel like you can kind of like feel the raised surface on some of the lines. I find if you give it a good rub, it's quite important, because when we come to our next process, you don't really want any loose bits. But once you've done it, there we go. You can see it's a lovely grid. Kind of matches the same as our one on this side. So a few particles jumped up into my gaps. So next thing we do is we take it outside or into a well ventilated area, and we prime it with some cheap black spray paint. All right, let's get onto that. Okay, we're outside and we've got our fiddly bits. This is just a flat black, you can see here. It's just the cheapest can of paint you can get from Bunnings, from your local hardware store. It's a rattle can. You just give it a good old shake and spray the surface. It's a bit windy here today, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So you just go ahead. This is very windy, and we spray the surface up, and you're just trying to get it in those lines more than anything. So you give it a decent coating. Probably a little windier than I would normally do it in, but that's kind of okay. You get the idea. And you go both directions, get a nice coating, and there you have it. So she's primed. Just have a bit of a look if you can see any spots where it doesn't quite look right. You can always give it a bit more. Okay, you let that dry, and then we can bring it inside and begin painting. Okay guys, so now after we've waited for this to dry, this has been a couple of hours, but it literally just takes about 15 minutes in good weather. As you can see, it's ready to paint. On this side we did grass, but I'm going to be doing this side with a bit of a cave floor. We're going to base it now for a base colour using this sienna or heavy sienna. This is a game colour, heavy sienna by Vallejo. I always use Vallejo paints, even for my terrain. I just find that they work better, and being that they're a pre-made colour, it's easy to always get the same colour every time. I suppose another good example of this would be this one I did here of a river setting, and you can see the Vallejo paint colour for the greens, and they match up beautifully. So this is why I like Vallejo paints. So let's get started. It's really very simple. You just take an old brush. I've just got a cheap old brush here. You can see the end, it's not very, it's not a fine brush at all. It's quite coarse. And I take my paint and I put a bit of paint on the board. Like so. And then I do a square at a time. Now I'll probably start over in the corner and work my way out. I'm careful when I paint not to get it into the holes here, or into these gouged out line markers. You want to keep it away from that. So you just want to get the base colour onto the tile section, but not necessarily in those line markers. The reason for that is, well, obviously, you want to be able to see the lines and keep that sort of definition. So there you go. It's a pretty simple step, really. I mean, there's nothing hard about it. You just paint it on, and you just carry on and do the whole thing. Another thing with these colours, they generally, when you put them on, they appear quite dark to begin with, and I find that they generally dry a little bit lighter than their wet look. So that's just something to take into consideration, I suppose, when you choose your colour. For this one I wanted a fairly dark base. That's why I've gone for this burnt sienna or heavy sienna colour. So you can see already where it's starting to dry over here. Might not be able to see it with the light, but see it's sort of dried and a little bit lighter than the wet patch. The wet shiny ones are got a bit more depth to them. They're a bit darker. Once it's dried light, it looks pretty good. So I find generally by the time I get to the end here, the first section I've started on is generally pretty dry. And the paint doesn't take all that long to dry, in all honesty. last few squares to go. And as you can see on the end over here, it's starting to dry. It's pretty much dry. And you wait for it to dry fully before you hit another colour onto it. Otherwise you get what will happen is the colour you put on will sort of bleed into this colour and they kind of combine, and I mean, if that's the effect you're going for, that's okay too, but personally I think, you know, if you're putting a secondary colour on, you want it to be secondary. And there we have it. Just spread that out a little bit to get the clumps off. Put it on some of the other bits. Just give it a quick once over. Check and see if I've missed anything. I think it looks pretty reasonable to me. I'm just going to let that dry and then clean my brush. And we'll have a look. So here we go, guys. We've got the grass side up. I've chucked on a couple of my modular mountains, and you can see here the hero makes his way to the cave entrance to battle with the gnolls and bugbears. Once inside, guys, he comes across some pretty fierce looking foes inside the cave. Who's going to win this fight, I wonder? So there you go, guys. That's how I build my Cork dungeon tiles. 12 inch by 12 inch, and I like to make them double-sided. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. Till next time, guys. Ciao.